ready to kick it off with some digital media technology. A quick intro for me, I'm the CEO of Stainless Code. Stainless Code is a media technology company. We work on projects related to digital asset management, media asset management, video transcoding, streaming, and of course, metadata. And tonight's talk is about time index metadata. Just a quick survey, hands, because this is a varied group. Who's from the digital media meetup here? Show of hands. Higher. And how about semantic web? Okay, that's not everybody, so the rest of you came for a free dinner. Well, this was a tough presentation to balance because it was a bunch of different groups. It's not going to be very long. I'd prefer to open the floor up to Q&A. So, let's keep it light. There's less people than I thought was going to be here, so the more interactive we can make it, the better. Well, what is tonight's talk about? Time index metadata. What is it? How is it being used today? What its potential is? And what are the challenges to achieving that potential? And there are many challenges, not only on the business side, but also for the technology groups who have to support those businesses. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So I want to introduce the concept of time index metadata, show some examples, tools, and applications, and talk a little bit about what Stainless does, and then open up the floor to Q&A. If I could get the slide to change. All right. We'll start with this. So this quote was plastered on top of an article I was reading in a trade show publication. Content is king, and context is its crown. I have no idea what this means. Does anyone have any idea what this means? I think I might know. It's just a soundbite. But what's the really cool thing about this quote about context? Anyone? Well, it's out of context. What does it mean? But it was on a trade show publication, so it must be legit. Well, what is the context? So this I want to set this quote should set the stage for the rest of our discussion. So when doing anything with research, the first thing you do is pop up Google, and hold on one second. When doing anything with research, the first thing we're going to do is pop up Yahoo, not to insult our gracious hosts. And we're going to take a look at these results. And we noticed a couple things. We noticed that, first of all, our quote is actually a misquote, slightly. The quote is, if content is king, context is its crown. It's a minor nuance, but it's worth pointing at. And most of the results come from this Swedish fellow, so we're going to take a look at his website. I'm not even going to begin to try to pronounce his name. And if we look at his website, as we dig deeper, we find that the quote comes from Eric Schmidt's McTaggart lecture, which was given in Edinburgh in 2011. So actually, the McTaggart lecture is given at the Edinburgh International Television Festival. It just happened this year. Does anybody know who gave this lecture this year? Kevin Spacey. That's correct, Kevin Spacey. It made the international news. So we're looking at the same lecture 2 years ago. I'm just reading the Wikipedia page here. So, it's founded in 1976. It's in Britain, blah, blah, blah. And if we dig even deeper and follow the links, we can find the actual video. So we can actually watch the very presentation that we're trying to analyze. Go internet. So there's something very interesting about this video, though. We can see that Google has taken the additional step of using a speech-to-text algorithm to produce a set of time index metadata. So below the video, you can see keywords and the approximate time that they appear in the presentation. So that's our first use case into what time index metadata is and how it can be used. So here's our quote again. We're going to add to our research. I'm going to slow down a little because I realized I've been blazing through this. And just clear my throat. We still don't have the context of the quote, though. We do have some more information like where it was given, the asset ID on YouTube. I don't know if there are any digital asset managers here, but that's something that's very important. And we have a time index. So we know that our quote happened at 26:55. Without further ado, let's go to the videotape. Here is the quote.
But if content is king, context is its crown.
Admittedly, that's kind of anticlimactic. But we did come full circle, right? So we have our quote, we have our time index metadata that helped us get to our quote, and we've seen our first use case, which is Google's automated transcriptions. So hopefully, if you didn't have an idea what time index metadata is and what it can do, you do now. Did that help anyone? So we still don't have the context of the quote, though. So we've gone this far. So building on our research, let's take a look at the context. And in this case, what I mean by context is some seconds before and after our quote.
Soon, your typical internet user won't be indoors with a PC. They'll be out and about with their cell or mobile phone or their tablet or what have you. And reflecting this, I think genres of online content and services are amazing. But if content is king, context is its crown. And one of the most important contextual signals is location. If you search for coffee from your mobile, odds are you're looking not for a Wikipedia entry on coffee, you're trying to figure out where the nearest cafe is because you're thirsty.
All right, so remembering that our quote was used in a trade publication about time-indexed metadata for media, we find out that he's actually not talking about that at all. He's talking about something else, but, some journalistic license is allowed, I suppose. What is interesting, though, is that in this particular case, we were able to rapidly find, analyze, and view a piece of media that had been indexed with time-indexed metadata, and it really took very little effort because of the type of metadata that was established. So let's talk a little bit about traditional versus time-indexed metadata. So we're going to dive a little bit more technical now. In every media asset management system, which is typically what most broadcasters or content owners have, they have metadata about their assets, and you can see it on YouTube also. And metadata is typically meant to be data about the clip as a whole. I see people nodding like they've been doing this too long. So I know. So we're talking about things like author, title, runtime, original air date, basically anything that you might see when you turn on DirecTV and look at a channel guide. That's traditional metadata. Time index metadata, though, is data about a particular frame in the media itself, contextual data. It's a machine understandable track that comes alongside the audio and visual stream, which is primarily for human consumption. So you can look at it as a lot of information that you and I might easily be able to absorb, but for a machine. Who's in the frame? What's in the frame? What's the context of the scene as a whole? And any related data. What music might be playing in the background? What dress somebody is wearing? Who made the wallpaper? I mean, it goes on and on. This slide pretty much details the difference between traditional and time index metadata. Who are you going to call? So what are some examples of time index metadata? Well, the earliest example that I can think of, although there might be earlier ones, is VH1's pop-up video. You guys remember VH1's pop-up video? If you don't, you're too young to be here and you need to leave. So this is baked in time index metadata where you would get trivia questions, or I think it was just trivia. There was no interactivity then. There's barely interactivity now. But that's the earliest example of time index metadata in the field. And the business challenge back then, remember, was to keep people watching the TV. And when you had a music video channel and you were showing the same content over and over and over again, how do you get people to come back and watch the same content? Well, you jazz it up a little bit. But this was one good example. And that was back in the days when they actually played music on music television. They don't do that anymore. The goal is obviously to get you to watch ads. A more recent example is the Walking Dead app. Has anyone used this app? Has anyone seen this before? So this is a second screen experience. The second screen experience is also an upcoming trend in media. Basically, your television is the first screen and your tablet or laptop is the second screen. How many people watch TV with their tablet or laptop in their lap? Yeah, that number is only going up. I think it's something like 75 to 80% of people in the 18 to 35 demographic now watch TV while doing something else. So, and they're on their tablet. What are they doing on their tablet? They're probably on Twitter. But they could be on this or a similar app. So the Walking Dead app is very cool. You can basically predict which zombies are going to be killed by whom and with what. And as they are killed in real time, in sync with the broadcast, your score goes up. This app won an Innovation Award last year at IBC, which is the International Broadcasting Conference. Why is that funny? Is that me or is it my phone maybe? Excuse me. It's not my phone, it's you, Joe. Okay, MLB Game Day. Who's used MLB Game Day? So this hits close to home for us. We work with these guys. MLB Game Day is the premier real-time second or first screen. MLB calls it a first screen. Baseball app. You get a time index metadata stream, which is rendered creatively, and you can watch it with the game or without the game. You get pitch information, lineups, scores. You can see it's really a dashboard for all your baseball needs in your lap.
And that syncs while you're watching the game on television?
It's real time. So this actually works with a live event. So there's no sync per se. Stuff happens and you get to hear about it. But I don't believe there's a replay. There might be a replay for this, but it wouldn't be synced with the show. Although
Is it in the stadium?
oh yeah, you can use it anywhere there's Wi-Fi, which is not in the stadium, unfortunately. But anywhere there's Wi-Fi, you can use it. Is there another question?
Now, what do you mean by rendered creative?
Well, I mean, they draw the picture of the batter for you, they give you a strike zone, and they show you where the pitches land. I was speaking, the metadata sits behind the UI, but they're rendering it in a neat way.
Okay.
The Walking Dead app is kind of neat. This is very neat.
How many artists does it take to do that?
How many artists? I don't know. Quite a few, I imagine. They have a very big office.
Why would you use this instead of watching the game on TV?
Well, there are different reasons. I can't go into all of them. I don't know all of them. But this particular app shows you all the games. You can't watch every game on TV. Also, you don't necessarily see every pitch location on TV. They don't. They just show you, an at-bat. And there are also some games and some other things that you can play. So I think the primary use of it, though, is to use it in lieu of the game. In other words, I can't.
In addition to?
You can use it in addition to.
Yeah, you're watching the game, you got this on your...
Or as a baseball fan, this actually leads into a pay portal where you can actually buy the subscription to watch the game on your application, whatever it is.
There's that too. Yeah. People use it with or without the video. It's just an example of a time index stream that's sent to your tablet or your phone that you can watch.
I have a question about this. How is the
Sure.
time index metadata generated for this particular? It's all automatic?
Well, there are a set of tools that are used. Ours is among them. And they basically, you'll see an example of how it's done, but basically there's a logger who is acquiring data for this game, multiple actually, and then it all gets merged together and sent to your tablet.
And it's driving something that's creating a video of the batter.
It's not video per se, but yeah, there's a rendering of the game. Yeah. You can watch the video if you subscribe.
Does it actually animate this way?
No, it does not. Good question. So for the last example, I want to let the content creators show off their own technology. Okay, well, now that our lives have meaning, we can continue. I'm pretty sure now if you want to watch us offline, we have to send a check to Turner. So we'll work on that. Okay, so we talked about what time index metadata is. We showed some examples of how it's being used today. Well, what are the challenges? So we've got it all figured out, right? So I heard Bob Bowman, who's the CEO of MLB Advanced Media, once say, you don't want to be 2 years too early or 6 months too late when it comes to any given product. Both are pretty much the same result. And unfortunately, in my opinion, I think we might be in the too early category for time index metadata. There's definitely a lot of stuff going on in the field, but there are a lot of questions about how it's really going to be monetized and what the technology will look like when it's ultimately adopted in a broad scope.
Has it been adopted by the standards groups for some future version of MPEG or anything like that?
Nope. And that's a good point, and that's one of the big challenges. And we'll talk about that right now. So, what are the business challenges? Well, in entertainment, there are basically two business models. Either the users pay for something or advertisers pay for something. And for the former model, you need great personalized content that is going to compel a user to pay. And for the latter model, you need to show advertisers that people are looking at their ads, and you need great compelling content to make that happen too. Nobody really has figured out how that's going to work with time index metadata yet. There's probably some Twitter integration. Twitter is the de facto social app for television today. So something like I said, I think 70 or 80% of 18 to 35-year-olds are on Twitter actively while they're watching television, tweeting about what's going on. So linking the time index metadata from the show to Twitter is probably an opportunity. Technologically speaking, there are some challenges. A lot have been figured out, but they're still there. So sync was brought up before. And sync right now is done through a technology called ACR, or automatic content recognition, where some other device that currently is not your television, but will be in the near term, in the near future, some other device listens to the audio that you're listening to and syncs that up with an audio fingerprint on a server somewhere to find out where in the stream you're at. I'll talk about this in a second, but I really think that this is a temporary Band-Aid type of technology because ultimately streaming the metadata with the content is the way to go. But for now, that's how sync is done. So I'll leave it as a challenge. Spoilers are a big, big problem these days for a lot of these different types of experiences. And, you know, anyone who lives bi-coastal or knows anyone bi-coastal or is even on Facebook knows, you never go on Facebook before the next Breaking Bad episode because someone is going to ruin it for you. So there are actually startups now that are spinning up that specifically deal with time shifting the social stream so that you don't have to worry about spoilers popping up in your stream. Why is that funny?
It sounds terrible.
Yeah, there is one I know, Tomorrow-ish is one. I'm sure there are others. Well, there's one called Spoiler Shield. So you can't make this stuff up, folks. So, yeah. But it is a problem, and for experiences, it's a big problem. As someone just pointed out, there are no standards for time index metadata. So people are not willing to really invest a lot of money in large systems that are going to be obsolete 6 months later. And how can you blame them? So that slows the growth of the technology. There's a question of, and this is related to standards, but how do you make reusable time index metadata? So look at the pop-up video example. Right? In pop-up video, they bake the trivia questions into the actual video. That's not reusable. You know, we're looking at Ghostbusters. How old is Ghostbusters now, folks? What is that? Longer than we care to admit? Yeah, it's a long time. Yeah, so that metadata is baked in there. How do we set up metadata that we can reuse 20 years later? Well, it's a challenge. Metadata acquisition is still a challenge. And I want to dive a little bit more into metadata acquisition as a challenge because this is where we live at Stainless, but it is pretty much a challenge we can overcome. There are some interesting nuances, though.
I have a question about the sync.
Sure.
Why would it be sound synced rather than just have a timestamp?
Well, how are you going to transmit the timestamp to the tablet?
Like, for example, with the Google example you gave, it started that, like, when you do a URL for a YouTube video, I forget the actual statement, but there's a time statement so you can start that video at a precise time. So if outside your video, your metadata says this text stream starts at this point, then we just have a URL for that.
It's a good question. Let's take it up at the end just because it's a little bit more involved. Is that all right? So I want to go back to our quote from the beginning. But I want to show you what that quote looks like in reality as indexed by Google service, verbatim. So at first glance you might think, Eric Schmidt is spending a little too much time at some distilleries in Scotland. But in reality, this is you're looking at the accuracy of a contemporary speech-to-text translator. It's about 20%. That one's 25, but as a whole, it's 20%. So that is, and the time index is off. I'm not trying to bash Google. I'm just saying, the time, it actually occurs at 26 something in the media, not 57. So I'm just trying to illustrate to you the state of automatic metadata extraction today. It's not where it needs to be. It's actually hilarious. I invite you to go and read this transcript. It is worth it. It is funny.
I've had to edit the YouTube's transcripts from their closed captions, and it's awful.
They should make a channel just with that. It's a moneymaker. Can I patent something standing here? Is that possible? Is there a lawyer?
It's called bad lip reading.
Yeah, whatever it is, I want money. It's a good idea. Let me show you how we do it at Stainless, and it's shameless plug time. I didn't want to overload the presentation with our stuff, but this is our tool, and it's a completely manual tool. So this is actually video. I'll just play it. The tool is pre-provisioned with data, and we work primarily in sports, so this is a sports example, but as you can see, we pre-provision with rosters and particular events that are interesting to the media, and then an operator watches the media in real time and acquires the metadata. And with this technique, you get a very highly accurate metadata stream, something like 99% accuracy.
So is one logger on each player that's on the field?
No. One logger per stream, typically, sometimes two, depending on how rich you want to get. So this stuff flows down into an asset management system. For anyone who works in video editing, you can see there's some video editing UI elements here. You're able to trim and do things like that. It's the other thing is that for a lot of these broadcasters, they have some very cheap labor in the form of subject matter experts who are college kids who are going to be watching this game anyway. And they're not all college kids. There's a guy at MLB who's a Harvard-educated lawyer who does this because he's going to watch the game anyway, and he wants to make whatever they pay. I don't know if I can say it here. And it's actually a very fun environment to work in, where you're sitting in a room with 20 other guys watching all the games. As long as your metadata is accurate, it's a fun night. He's not married. So this is just to give you an idea of what that tool looks like. So we're still in a manual acquisition type phase for a lot of this stuff. That's really how you get the most accurate metadata.
What do you do with your metadata? It's a separate file, timestamps, or?
No, this flows via API directly to a media asset management platform, which is handling video ingest and a bunch of other stuff simultaneously.
So is it part of the video codec of some sort, a custom codec? Or?
Are you talking about the distribution part of it or the acquisition? Because the codec isn't really involved in this stage. The video is recorded and stored, and then our system simultaneously records the metadata, and then they get married up later.
Okay, so you just have your own kind of stream format for your metadata?
Yeah, there are no standards for embedding metadata in the stream like this. They do have subtitles and some other forms of metadata that are simpler, but not rich metadata like this yet.
So it's not a file format. It's just like a socket stream.
It's a database.
Oh, okay.
This is in a database at this point.
So does this go to YouTube, or let's say if this is, I don't know who owns this, ESPN, do they take the video and put it on their site and not? My question is, does YouTube handle this metadata? Like, could you give this to YouTube and they would know what to do with it, or?
I don't know specifics about the YouTube API right now. We can look it up. I'm sure you can get it on the internet. But they do have a system to handle time index metadata. You've seen it in some YouTube videos. You can actually see overlays at specific times in the video. That's a system like this. So there is something there.
What effect does this stream content have on my cellular data plan?
It's a good question. It depends on how the provider, and by provider I mean content owner, is sending you the metadata. So it varies. But this is very little data. So, you can just see in ASCII what it looks like here. It can then be compressed and sent to your phone in even smaller chunks than that.
Like how about that MLB app? That sounds like a lot of content all.
Compared to the video, the metadata content is short.
Yeah, it's really nothing. I mean, compared to the video especially, it's nothing. That MLB app, all the graphics and stuff are already on your phone. So all it's sending you is, maybe a 20, 30 character JSON string every time there's an event. I mean, it's really nothing. I don't know what that is. I would stop it if I did.
And a lot of that metadata you would never get. It would just be something that you search based on. So it would be going to the platform. If you search by a player, you're going to get all those players.
All right.
Well, before you go, how is that metadata in that database on the asset management system used by Major League Baseball now? Or I'm sorry, used by the NBA now?
How is it used? Well, they use it for a lot of different things. In the NBA case, when you are watching replays on a live show, they use that metadata to cut the replays or melts or whatever they're putting together for production. And they also use it to chop up the video and send it to the web for clips. Or
So it's a B2B use now. It's a tool that they're using internally.
yeah, they use it internally. Yeah, in that particular case. Yeah.
Are you aware of any MOOCs or like online classes where there's a lecture that would have indexed metadata, so if you wanted to go back and what was that point you were making where you could easily do it?
I don't right now, but I'm actually going to a conference in a few weeks to pitch that idea. So All right, so where is this technology going? Well, much like audio enhanced the moviegoer's experience in 1923, today, time index metadata can enhance our viewing experience. That's my opinion. In the future, I don't think we're going to consume any media without an associated time index metadata stream. And in the future, that stream will be highly personalized. So it's not just going to be particular at-bats or particular pitches. You're going to get information that the systems know you're interested in. Hope the NSA isn't involved, but they might be. They have a lot of information. In any event, that's what's going to make it compelling. This is the compelling content that we need to monetize this type of technology. It needs to be highly personalized. I'm just spitballing here, but if you think about a use case where you're watching a news channel and they're talking about a specific story, you'll be able to get links to other people who have different views on that story. And then in the future, those will be views that the systems know you're interested in. So if you're watching Fox News, you'll get Colbert Report clips, if that's the way you lean, and vice versa. That's the type of thing, that's the type of experience that this type of technology can enable.
It'll only be possible with standardization from all these different channels.
Well, there will be standardization. The question is it going to be top-down or bottom-up? And it's probably going to be bottom-up. In other words, there'll be a de facto standard that someone creates that everyone just ends up using. I've been involved in some of the MPEG standardization stuff, not for MPEG specifically, but for some workflow stuff, and it takes forever. So it's probably going to be one startup that just makes it, and everyone will adopt that particular standard.
Can you discuss the database that you're using for some of these?
Define discuss.
Explain what you're using. I'm using MySQL, are you using something else?
Okay, so that particular database, I'm pretty sure is Oracle. We're agnostic to the database.
This is the relational database.
Well, I'll get into it into a second. We actually use a semantic database, so we use a triple store, but in that case, it is a relational database. I'll talk a little bit about the semantic aspect of this in a little bit. But you guys are doing fine. Keep the questions coming. It's not bothering me. You can also imagine the lean-back version of what we saw at the beginning of the talk, where we had to go look up stuff about Eric Schmidt and what was going on. But there's a lean-back version of that, where it comes to us as we're watching that program. And that's kind of the epitomal use case for this, where I want content delivered to me while I'm watching media, and the systems know what I'm interested in, and they're just going to deliver it to me. And I'm going to do commerce on those platforms. So what do we need to get from here to there? Well, we need richer tool sets, for one. There's our tool set. And there are some others. Adobe has a tool set. They have a platform, but of course it's integrated with the rest of their media platform. The lack of standards, it would be great if there were standards, but there probably won't be standards. Sorry, guys.
What is Adobe standard?
I think it's called Prelude. It's not a standard per se. It's Can you hear me without the mic?
Yeah.
It's not a standard per se. It's more of a platform that they use. So it's integrated into their Premiere workflow, which includes everything from ingest to transcode to all that stuff. So I'm pretty sure they're also using just a relational database or something similar to that. We need better distribution mechanisms. ACR is cool technology now. I mean, it's cool to have a device listen to the audio and figure out where you are in something, but it's really kind of useless in the long term. We need this metadata delivered with our content and then pushed to our mobile devices. That gets rid of a lot of problems. Okay. So, I'm sorry, was there a question? So, just yawning? So, I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Stainless to work around some of these problems, just a very little bit. And we're using semantic technologies to get around some of these problems. So, effectively, what you have is semantic tagging. Each particular action or person in a frame, or each particular metadatum, is a semantic URI. So in the Eric Schmidt example, we would tag him with, this is a Wikipedia link, but we would use some semantified link like DBpedia or Freebase or something, which links to his page, his Wikipedia page. And in this way, we use the web of linked data to keep the data fresh. So I know Eric Schmidt's in a particular clip. I know he was talking about, context. And if I watch the clip now, I can get news about what he's doing now. And if I watch the clip 10 years from now, I know what he's doing 10 years from now because I didn't store the particular trivia about Eric Schmidt. I just stored the raw data about who was in the clip and what they were doing. So in my humble opinion, this is the way to get around a lot of the problems that have to do with standardization. This is becoming a de facto standard anyway. Now we have Google Knowledge Graph and Facebook Open Graph and all kinds of graph-based search. And it's really going to be the way not only you search not only on the web, but all information is delivered to you. So things will get particular URLs that are associated with them. For those of you who aren't as part of the semantic group, I want to try to explain it as best I can, but we're basically going to see things where individual shirts have URLs. And then we know we know the SKU number of that shirt because it has a page like a Wikipedia page where we can look that stuff up. And if that number changes, we don't have to change our metadata. We just look up the new SKU number from the page. So these are the sort of types of technologies that we can use to help get around some of the standardization problems. Excuse me. So that's it. Here's my information. If you would like to contact me, please feel free, or I'm right here, so if you want to ask me questions. Oh, thank you. And feel free to pick up a business card if you want, this information in a handy little card-based format.
What are some resources to get started with metadata, including the metadata of the stuff that programs will store, like about a PDF, and all these various things that some people don't think about that it stores metadata, but it does, like various program files?
It's a good question. I don't know if I can answer it completely, but a great place in terms of video is to start looking at things like the YouTube API, or even just use YouTube and you can see how some traditional metadata is stored. There's always a little panel next to any media that says, what's the metadata about this media, and you can see it. In general, though, metadata by its nature doesn't really have specific standards. There are different formats, but all it means is that there's some data about some other data. That's what metadata means. It's data about data. So I have some data, in this case an AV stream. Here's some metadata, which is some time indices and whatever else is in there. Sorry if that doesn't answer your question completely.
Are news organizations doing some kind of automatic tagging, like when politicians are making speeches?
There are. There's a company called Boxfish. Boxfish. And what Boxfish does is they take the subtitle track of any particular, I think news is their big vertical, but probably any content, and they make, they give you a very broad time index metadata stream for that content. So they'll tell you, hey, at such and such a time they're talking about Syria, or this person is talking. So that's what Boxfish does. And then there's something called the Internet Archive, which is it internetarchive.org? Archive.org. Thank you.
There's something related to that project where they have all closed caption open data out there. I think it is Web Archive or something similar.
Yeah, these guys in San Francisco who have been digitizing news programs constantly, nonstop. Roger McDonald, and they are they have a search API where you can go in and say, hey, show me clips about Syria, and you'll get them. So that's another interesting resource.
Also the news.
This that you do is not closed captioning. It's not ACR, right? It's different. Somebody typing what is shown on the screen.
So closed captioning, in a way, is a form of time index metadata. It's the textual data, but that's not what these particular tools do. We're actually tagging information that's not necessarily in the closed captions. For example, there's a particular jersey brand that the guy's wearing or a particular piece of music playing in the background. That's what we're tagging because we're interested in monetizing that some way. So they're related, but they're not the same.
And can you combine these with closed captioning?
Well, that's what Boxfish does a little bit. They take the closed captions and they turn them into this type of metadata. Closed captioning has been used as a way, as an automatic acquisition tool for metadata, but as I showed you in the Google example, depending on how the captions are acquired, sometimes they're not so great either. I mean, anybody watching live TV can tell you that. Literally what they're doing now is sending audio streams to guys probably, somewhere offshore, and these guys are typing in what they hear. I think there was a famous case recently where someone wrote that the Boston bomber was Zooey Deschanel in a closed caption, like they had just typed in her name because they heard it, and she tweeted about it. So this happens all the time. This is why you can't necessarily use that data for accuracy. What we found is that it always needs to be verified by a human. So why not just have the human do it to begin with? You don't need a $10 million system and then a $60 person to go and do this, $60 an hour person. You just have the guy do it, or gal. So it's, Sorry, does that answer your question? I was rambling on a little bit there.
Sorry, I missed a lot of your talk, but is there any sort of standard or working group developing a standard for time-based metadata?
Not that I know of. There's no official working group. There are a lot of de facto standards, but there's not one that I know of that are actually sitting down and looking at this.
A follow-up on the sync, the voice sync or the sound sync with metadata and how that sound sync is used.
I'm sorry, you want me to?
You mentioned it as one of the
You're talking about ACR?
What's that?
You're talking about ACR, the sound sync?
But it was one of the hurdles you had listed was sync.
Right.
And you said they were using sound sync to try and time the metadata as opposed to just a timestamp. I was kind of curious about that.
Right. So the way that it works today is that you'll be watching TV, and we're talking specifically about a two-screen scenario here. So it's not like I'm watching the video on YouTube. I'm watching television, and I have a tablet in my lap or my phone out. And I'm sure you've seen Shazam. Shazam is this. This is what Shazam does. So I'm watching TV. I want to know, or an app needs to know, where I am in the media because there's some time index metadata it wants to deliver to me, some time indexed experience. So how does it find out? They're not connected. My phone is not connected to my TV yet.
But they both know the time.
Right, but it could be time shifted.
DVR.
Yeah, you could be watching on DVR, or it's not. You're not necessarily watching live. For live events, you're right, and that's the baseball case where I'm watching a live game. I know what time it is.
What time since it started?
Yeah, but for DVR, I don't know where the DVR is. You could be watching any frame of any content at any time on DVR. I just don't know. The only way to figure it out is to listen to the audio. Also, it prevents me from having to integrate with every broadcaster's program, so I don't need to know what they're showing at a given time. And also, if they change the schedule, I don't need to know that either. I'm just going to listen to the audio and do a fingerprint, and now I'll know what you're watching and where you are in there. There are a bunch of different companies that do that now. ACR.
Is it seamless so that once it tags you, once it hears the audio clip and finds out where you are, that it, how often is it checking or listening?
That's a good question. I don't know. I would imagine that it updates periodically, but In the Shazam case, it's a one-time deal. Like you just, problem with Shazam is that, and I don't understand why people use it the way they do, but if I'm watching a 30-second spot, by the time the Shazam logo comes up, unless I have the phone in my hand with the app running, there's no way I'm going to catch it. So for longer form content, it might work, but for 30-second or 15-second spots, I've literally seen Shazam advertised in a 15-second spot. There's no way that people are whipping out their phones and getting that ready. It would be like,
Watching it on DVR, they just hit rewind if they really want to know.
well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
DVR is a good point, yeah. But for live, do people actually do that? I wonder if there are numbers on that. Would they actually rewind a DVR just to use Shazam instead of just like going to
I
their...
admit it, I've done it.
Interesting.
It was a contest that you could actually, like, it came up with a web page rather than just the name of the thing.
That's interesting.
Two questions. Do you know of any open source projects that are being done around time index metadata?
Open source in what way? Like, what part of the workflow would you be interested in?
As much of it as possible.
I don't. ACR is a patented technology, right? So if you want to use ACR, there's a guy you need to talk to about that, whether it's an open source implementation or not. There are open source, audio fingerprinting technologies, but they might be covered by that patent. In terms of the rest of this stuff, a simple database and a quick tool like ours to actually acquire the data is you could build with open source tools. But specifically an open source framework for this type of stuff, I don't know of one specifically.
Or is your company considering releasing anything as open source or producing anything in terms of a paper standard that other people could follow?
We've considered it.
That's good to hear.
I'm very much into open source. I love open source. Not so easy to make money with open source.
There's got to be a second redhead out there.
Well, if you want to discuss a way with me, we can talk about it. I'm all for. Open source has contributed so much to software development in general that you just feel compelled to want to give back to it. But open source will not be feeding my family. So I need to figure out what that looks like, and if we do, I would be more than happy to talk about it.
You can also propose a standard with the W3C and wait like 20 years, and then
right,
it'll happen and spend a lot of money and effort.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily encourage you to put your source code out there, but taking some of your knowledge and producing standards that other people could follow might produce an ecosystem of interoperable stuff, which would include commercial efforts and open source efforts. But you need to have some way for these things to be able to communicate. Having open source people working on it, might produce things that you could use to make money from.
All great points. Absolutely. Just need to open source. I don't want to get into an open source discussion, but as open source is more like it's not just something you can do, it's something you have to immerse yourself in. You have to build a community, and you have to actually go and water the plants and take care of the home and do all the housekeeping stuff to keep it going. It's like a living, breathing thing. So you can release stuff as open source, but you really have to promote it to get people to use it. And then once they start using it, it takes on a life of its own. So it's kind of an interesting way to develop, and it's a great way to develop, but it's a much longer term type of endeavor. And
if you put on if you have the standard and just put it on GitHub and then kind of let everybody in the community know about it, that's not a bad way.
Yeah.
I have a free application that allows you to create metadata that it's created more for transcriptions and closed caption market, where you can go in and just copy a YouTube URL into it and start typing away and timestamping your data, and are able to export a time index file or a web VTT or a TTML file for closed caption purposes.
Was that
You transcribe.tv. is the website. And the reason behind the free is because I want people to play around with the editor. My goal is I have another one called subtitle.tv, and that one is a premium, and it's basically speech to text. It'll do a first pass like Google, but with the idea that you then can go in and edit the content. And then again produce, in this case, the same thing, a WebETT, a HTML file, which are all YouTube compatible closed caption files.
Have you seen the Facebook Open Graph, like canonical URL to reference metadata? They seem to be pushing the semantic web forward pretty hard, and I actually just read about it today. It was like for mobile web, instead of having to load all the OG metadata tags, you can just reference a specific URL somewhere, and actually you can save for web-based Open Graph objects. You reminded me of at the end of your talk, and you referenced Facebook Open Graph, so I'm just curious, how influential do you think that would be?
I think it's going to be hugely influential. I think that is the way everything is going to go in the next 5-10 years, which almost makes putting a standard together irrelevant, because the standard will be, hey, it's just links. It's Tim Berners-Lee original vision. It's just links between pages, and links identify resources. So resource can be, a person, place, or thing, including you. And once all those links are put together into a graph, you can do anything with them. So I think that's the way it's going to go. It's really just a question of how are you exposing that data, and to whom are you exposing that data via API, because we live in an API economy now. So.
Yeah, and Open Graph actually is valid RDFA, so it is already a standard that's accepted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, there was a question back there. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Are you doing any symbol or simulacrum searching where it's based off of like an OpenCV type of platform?
We don't do searching
or
per se.
Make it accessible where you can take the index of a video and see the symbol in it, or some sort of like a Pepsi logo, for instance.
Oh, you're talking about like logo extraction or identification, that type of stuff? We don't do that per se as a company. My background is actually in computer vision, so I've done some of that stuff. One of the things that one potential client was looking for was commercial detection, and that's the type of thing where that technology comes in very useful, because probably in 80 to 90% of every commercial, there's a logo somewhere. The challenge, of course, is distinguishing that from the fake commercial that somebody shows, or commercial within content, which is a semantic problem, because you need to know when you're watching a commercial in a piece of content, it's actually a commercial or a part of the content. So it's not an easy problem. And again,
And product placement, it is a commercial and it is the content.
Right, there are logos in products. So it gets back to, we need humans to watch this to make those decisions. That's why the automated systems are good at getting you 85% of the way there, but never 100. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.